Rocket Racing has finally come out and it has some problems. Okay, it has a lot of problems.
No, get the camera!
For those of you that don't know, the developers of this game actually had a game before this called Rocket League. They stopped entire production on that game, more or less, and basically let it die in order to come out with Rocket Racing. Now it's time to beg the question, was it worth it? It's hard to say whether or not it was, but that's what we're going to try to do in this video, and we're going to go over the many problems that Rocket Racing has now that it's out and into the world. Rocket Racing is meant to be a fun, fast-paced, action-packed racing game, and for the most part, it is. Well, at least it could be if they went and fixed all the problems that I list here in this video. This game has a ton of potential, and I'm enjoying it. I believe one day it could be great, but not before addressing the problems that exist in the current state of the game. One of the most important things, and something that's becoming all too rare these days, is the state of which the game is actually released in, and whether or not it's good. I can say with full confidence that the release of this game is not a good one. This game has problems, lots of problems, and if you're enjoying playing it, it can quickly turn into a nightmare. If I had to make a list of every single word in the English dictionary that I could use to describe this game, I would take the word polish, and I would push it so far down the list that you couldn't even find it, because this game is not that. This game is a complete bug fest. I honestly can't even believe that they released it in the state that it's in. No updates to their previous game for 2 years, and this is what we got. Now don't get me wrong, the game is still fun, and like I said, has a lot of potential, but the entire time that you're playing it, it's hard not to picture that it was thrown together over the course of a few months by some dude in his basement who spent 30% of that time digging through a bag of Cheetos. I'm sure the developers have worked extremely hard on this game, as most developers do, but take a look at this ramp here on Pleasant Pit Stop. This is one of the first maps you get to play on. What even is that? This just screams lazy right out of the box. And little things like this exist everywhere throughout the game. These things could be forgiven, in theory, if the mechanics of the game at least were spot on, but they're not. The foundation is there, but to anyone who has spent even a tiny amount of time playing the game, you can immediately tell how incredibly jank it is. It is not really fluid in any way, shape, or form. The entire basis of it feels sluggish. Like my car is actually just a boat treading through mud, not a rocket-powered car going 1,200 kilometers per hour down a racetrack like the game intends to make you feel. Then you take to the air, and you're met with more wonkiness. The flip animation feels cheap, at least to me, almost as if it was a placeholder for an animation they meant to replace later. And don't even get me started on the way that the game tries to connect you to walls. Every time you get near a wall, it magnets you towards the wall, and that is one of the jankiest things in this game because it never puts you where you want to be. It's like it has an entire mind of its own. Oh, you want to jump on this wall? That's too bad. We're going to connect you to this rock and slam you into this other rock, and then you're going to die. And wait until you go into your first tunnel, because every tunnel in this game, you're doomed to get turned around and heading the wrong way. The tunnels in this game are a total travesty because it's way too easy to get turned completely around. Everything else on this list could be forgiven if the mechanics of the game were rock solid, but they're not. If a game isn't fun to play, then what is it? I mean, the game is still fun, but these things are sucking the life out of it right now and what it could be. Back to more mechanical wonkiness. Arguably the worst thing in this entire game is the collision mechanics. Take something like Mario Kart. The collision mechanics are there and you notice them, but they're never intrusive on the game or the experience, and you never feel like the game is just completely screwing you over. Well, except for the items. Give me something other than a banana in first place, bro. Come on. But in this game, it's a different story because the collision mechanics are absolutely awful. Other cars get glued onto yours. It's like they get stuck on you and just push you around until you slam into a wall. If there was one thing that's holding this game back, it's this. There's nothing fun about bumper cars, especially with poorly implemented mechanics. You could at least have a car slightly bounce off after a collision so that I don't feel like me and XXOG Fortnite God are intertwined life partners with no hope of escaping. Exacerbating these issues are the starting positions. They have you line up on the starting line in these rows, and where you start can indicate your entire race, especially in the higher ranks. Being up front is a massive advantage. If you can start ahead and just drive around the track, the game is 10 times easier. But if you start anywhere in the pack, good luck. Your starting boost is just going to slam you into the cars in front of you, then you're all going to be slamming into each other for the rest of the race like a herd of wild buffalo. Except you're not roaming green pastures, you're roaming Amazon to replace the controller you just smashed against your desk because you're an angry little gaming gremlin. They want this game to be competitive. It even has a ranked mode, but competitive is going to have to be thrown down there with the word polish is one of the last words I would use to describe this game. Something has to be done about the skill gap because there's not much. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely a difference between good and bad players, but in a group of good players, whether or not you win can come down to a whole bunch of luck. This game could be more competitive in the future, but for now you basically just have to queue up ranked and try to have a good time because the game could screw you over and cause you to lose at any second completely out of your control. Not to mention how hard it is to actually rank down. The game could be a good time and you should probably be playing it just for that right now because it isn't really all that serious or competitive. As I said in the beginning of this video, they wanted this game to be action-packed and fast-paced, and sometimes it is, but sometimes it's also not. When you're flying around corners and boosting and heading at max speed, it's fun, it's satisfying, and it's fast. When you're going down a straightaway at base speed, it feels like the game is in slow motion. All the engagement is completely gone, and it starts to get a little boring. Maybe it's not as good of an idea as I believe it is because new players could struggle too much, but I think the base speed needs to be increased because going down these long straightaways at a normal pace is just monotonous. It feels like it takes forever and sucks the pace and the fun straight out of the game. Where this game really shines is when you're speeding down the track, but it seems like everywhere they throw these things at you that slow you down, and every time you slow down, the game becomes less fun. So we have these obstacles everywhere that kill your speed, and we have these red barriers on the outside of the track that also kill your speed. While the obstacles I think are necessary for a challenge, the ones on the outside of the track are just there to make the game less fun, especially with the bad collision mechanics of people knocking you around into the walls and into these red barriers that are just slowing you down, and there's nothing you can do about it. All of your speed just gets sliced because of the jank. In my opinion, these barriers have got to go. If you've been playing this game, there's one thing that you've noticed. There are AFK players everywhere. And you're probably wondering, well, where are all these AFK players coming from? Are people just queuing up, going to make a bowl of cereal, and then not playing the game? Well, not exactly. What is actually happening is that people are finishing the race, and they put down the game and walk away, but the game automatically puts you into another match. If you don't click anything at the end of a race, the game will put you in a new race. And what this leads to is just AFK players everywhere. And this one area actually has two problems, because when you finish a match and you actually want to get into another race, you cannot click next race until everybody has finished. It'll sit there and say awaiting results and not allow you to start immediately queuing for another match because of all these AFK players that the game has just so happened to throw into these lobbies. Yes, the microtransactions and the items. What drives these companies to create these games in the first place? If you play Rocket League, there are thousands of items you could have accrued to your account by now, and you used to be able to trade those items in that game, but they completely got rid of that feature after years of it being an integral part. And the entire reason that they got rid of that feature is so that you could bring all those items over here into Rocket Racing inside of Fortnite. Yet, as someone who hit the highest rank in Rocket League and has thousands of items, the only thing I have here in Rocket Racing is 2 cars and the base decals. They mention all these items and how they're going to bring them into the game, but right now there's pretty much none. Out of all the items I have in Rocket League, I don't have shit in this game. They say that they're going to add these in the future, but if they're going to butcher their original game that they made, they should have been more prepared. And while we're on the subject of items and in-game purchases, let's just talk about how exorbitant these prices are. You don't have to buy these items and they don't really change the game, but if you want to, you're gonna pay an arm and a leg for them because they're just insanely expensive for no reason. Things that used to be cheap in Rocket League, they've raised the prices for, and then raised them again now in Rocket Racing. Don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying this game and having a lot of fun. It has a lot of potential, but in its current state, it's almost like a beta of a game and not a complete game. It has issues and a lot of issues, but if they put in the time and effort to fix these problems, they could have something really special on their hands. But we'll just have to wait and see whether or not they actually do. I want you guys to let me know down in the comments if you're playing this game and how much fun you're having and what your biggest complaints are and what issues you've run into. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and if you didn't, well, I don't really care. You probably have a weird smell anyways. Use my creator code Cadence, K-D-E-N-C-E, no period, and stick around because there's more coming. Peace.